Okay, welcome to another episode of Tom Kennedy's Science. In this episode, we're going to talk about evolution by natural selection, and why that is the central paradigm for all of biology. I know we do have a central paradigm. Okay, so let's take a look at our lecture topics. Evolution by natural selection is biology's central paradigm, and we're going to discuss why that is. We're also going to talk about natural selection and what it is. We're going to define it and look at Darwin's key insights into natural selection. And very briefly, I'm just going to explain why evolution is both a fact and a theory. In fact, I have a whole nother lecture on that one, but I'm just going to hit on it briefly at the end of this lecture. Okay, here's Theodosonsky. I mean, he sums it up perfectly. And he says, nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. It's a really profound statement, right? Nothing makes sense except in the light of evolution. Well, why is that? Well, before we dive into that, let's look at the word paradigm. What does paradigm mean? And so when we say biology, the evolution is biology's central paradigm, what we mean is that a paradigm is a standard set of ideas. It's a way of thinking that unites a field of study. So when it comes to biology, evolution explains both the unity and the diversity of life. Let's take a closer look. Okay, we got some very different looking organisms here. On the left, you're going to see a castnet spider, also called an ogre-faced spider. I hate that name. We'll use castnet spiders. You see it's holding its net in its front legs, and it will literally toss that net onto its prey. In the middle is a sponge, and on the right is a flowers. That's a milkweed, actually. You know, the kind that monarchs like to go to. Despite the fact that we haven't shared a common ancestor with those organisms and, well, with the animals in probably 800 million years, with plants and maybe 8 billion years, and even if we threw in bacteria that we haven't shared an ancestor with in several billion years, well, there's still unity in life. For one, plants, animals, fungus, we're all eukaryotic organisms. We have mitochondria that make ATP. We have all of our DNA inside of a cell nucleus. We have organelles like an endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi bodies that help package proteins and export them outside the cell. And if we include bacteria, we share a common ancestry with bacteria going even further back. So the unity of life is we all share the same genetic code. It's not that we just have the four same letters, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, or those letters represent to the nucleotides, but the sequence of those that code for amino acids that make proteins, guess what? It's the same through all life. So we share that same genetic code. We are all made up of proteins using the same basic 20 amino acids, right? Like leucine, isoleucine, glutamine. You get the idea. And not only that, those amino acids, they're all left-handed amino acids. They have the same chirality, like you have a left-handed or right-handed glove. Not only do we use the same building blocks to make proteins, the same genetic code, we also share metabolic pathways. You're going to learn about something called citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle and glycolysis later in the semester. Those are fundamental processes, metabolic processes, series of chemical reactions shared by all living organisms, at least in some form. And to share a metabolic pathway, we share the same enzymes. So we share probably 100, 135 genes are ubiquitous across all life because we have shared ancestry. And when you look at that castnet spider, it has muscles, a nervous system, symmetry, germ layers. It starts as a zygote and grows into an individual. So believe it or not, we actually share a lot in common. And even the plant, even at the cellular level, the way our cells function is really similar even to that as a plant. And that is the unity of life. And we can look at these vertebrates. There's a fish, a lizard, a salamander, and a squirrel. You and me, we haven't shared a common ancestor to the squirrel in probably 65, 70 million years. We haven't shared a common ancestor with a lizard in about 310 million years. With a salamander, well, who knows, at least 315 million years. And with a fish, it's been, gosh, 375 million years. Actually, with that fish, go back 440 million years because that's a ray-finned fish, not a lobed-finned fish. So we can see that there's clear diversity there. Now, once again, there's unity. They're all vertebrates. They have a dorsal nerve cord, right? We have paired appendages. This is my modified pelvic pectoral fin. Sorry, my legs would be the modified pelvic fins. I have a mouth, we got eyes. We have a heart, kidneys, a digestive system, a mouth with teeth, bones, right? So we share so much in common, hence unity. But over time, from fish ancestors, we've diversified into all of these living organisms. So that's the unity and diversity of life. So because we share common ancestry, there's unity, but because species are constantly evolving, there's diversity. So that is why evolution is the central paradigm of biology, because it explains that amazing diversity that we see on this planet today, even when we talk about bacteria, archaeans, and plants and animals. Okay, so we have evolution and evolutionary theory. Simply defined, evolution just means species change over time. Now, if you're bored with that definition, going, that's too simple for me, you can, well, up the ante. It's a change in allele frequencies in a population from one generation to the next. That's a more precise definition of microevolution. Evolutionary theory explains why species change over time, and natural selection is the mechanism of adaptive evolution. For those of you that are wanting a little bit more, I'm going to have a series of lectures that dive into this. There are other mechanisms of evolution that I discuss in other videos, like mutation, gene flow, and genetic drift. But for our class here with our Bio for Health Sciences, just need to know that natural selection is the mechanism causing adaptive evolution. Okay, so what is natural selection? Okay, natural selection basically says that life and death are not random and is based on these different premises. Basically, there's three premises. First of all, there are more individuals born than can survive. And in fact, this is a mass of tadpoles. And in my yard, I actually have hundreds of tadpoles that I've rescued from ponds around Torrance County where I live because they keep going dry before the tadpoles can morph into frogs. So I've thrown them into a pond that has permanent water and given them a chance. But if you think about this, there are more individuals born into a population than can survive. And Darwin got this insight from Malthus, who realized, in the 1800s, when the human population reached 1 billion for the first time in our history, that all populations were capable of exponential growth, but yet we're not run over by flies. Now, within a population, there is variation among individuals. Just think of all of your friends and everybody you interact with in class and in our life. We're all slightly different from each other. And these are Anolis cuvieri. They're these large anoles, lizards from Puerto Rico. You can clearly see that there is variation in those individuals. Of course, those variations come from mutations. And Darwin, when he was on the HMS Beagle, he spent 3.5 years in South America making lots of collections, and he clearly saw that not all individuals were the same. And then here's the other premise. Life, death, and reproduction over the long haul, right, are not totally random. Some individuals are better fit to the environment. And those individuals that are better fit to the environment, they can find food, find shelter, avoid disease, avoid predation. Those are the ones that are more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass on those genes to the next generation. And because life and death are not random, some individuals are more likely to survive than others. So when it comes to the tadpoles out in my pond, the ones that can morph more quickly from tadpole to froglet are more likely to survive because they're going to not die when the little puddle dries up. That's why we're not overrun by spadefoot toads out here, or flies, or frogs, or elephants, or beetles. So, life and death are not random. So, what happens is that over time, you accumulate favorable traits in the environment. So, individuals with better traits that are better suited to their environment are more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass those beneficial traits on to the next generation. So, over time, this population evolves as it accumulates advantageous traits. So this is a katydid. This katydid looks just like a leaf. They're related to grasshoppers. Look at that. I mean, it's got veins in it. It looks like it's decaying. And in fact, the first time I saw this, I was like, man, something got a hold of that katydid. No, they all the members of that species have that same exact pattern in the back that looks like it's being chewed up. So natural selection, to be fit to your environment, you don't just have to be the fastest cheetah. You can also be cryptic to avoid predation. Or here it is, we can define it again. Another way of thinking about it, right? We're just passing on good genes in our environment, or to the next individual. We're passing on good genes. They accumulate over time, causing the population to evolve. This is actually a fly. And this fly is in the Jemez Mountains, where I found it in New Mexico. It has evolved to look like the bumblebees nearby. And we all know bees won't really mess with you unless you mess with them. Don't do it, they can sting you. This fly is also a pollinator coming into flowers right next to bumblebees, but it's harmless. It cannot harm you, but it's evolved to look like the bee, so things won't mess with it. Okay, so natural selection has two major consequences, right? There are two logical conclusions. And this goes back to our biology. And this goes back to evolution being the central paradigm of biology. Today's species are descendant from ancestral species. And because we descended from ancestral species, we share traits with those ancestors. But because life is evolving, we're getting more diversity. This explains many things about our world, like whales evolved from something that lived on land. That's why a whale fin has the same bones that our arm does. It's got a humerus, a radius, ulna. It's got carpals, metacarpals, phalanges. They breathe air. They have hair. They have live birth. They produce milk for their young. They still have hair, just not very much of it. Four-chambered heart. All of these things because they inherited that from their common ancestor, or their ancestor that was also a mammal as well. So that's a very important point. And because natural selection is a differential survivorship of individuals in a population, it is the mechanism, the driving force of adaptive evolution. Now remember, a population can evolve because over time, it doesn't have to be natural selection. It could be random, but natural selection is actually causing species to become better fit to their environment. Okay. Now, here's some quick clarifications. Natural selection acts on individuals most of the time. We'll just leave it at that for right now. However, only populations can evolve. An individual cannot evolve. And secondly, that's it. Individuals can't evolve. Now, lastly, evolution, fact and theory, talked about this before. Well, species change over time. That's a fact. Facts are observable phenomena, or phenomena that actually occur. We can verify them through experiments and observations. We can observe, measure, and test for evolution. We can actually see it happening. And then also, evolution is a theory. When we talk about evolutionary theory, theories are broad, powerful explanations that explain phenomena in our world. So evolution, species changing over time, is a phenomena that is happening in our world. Natural selection explains why species change over time. It has been supported by over 160 years or more. Actually, going back to the 1830s, starting with Darwin collecting data on his voyage on the HMS Beagle. And in fact, we have never overturned evolution, the fact that species change over time, and natural selection is the major mechanism causing it. All right. Well, I hope you learned something about evolution and why it's biology's central paradigm. Until next time, this is Tom Kennedy Science.